Hello and welcome back to our deep dive into the minds that shaped our world. Today we're journeying to 19th century London, a city of immense wealth and desperate poverty, which became the laboratory for one of history's most influential thinkers, Karl Marx. After being forced out of continental Europe, Marx arrived in London in 1849. This wasn't a glamorous new beginning. It was a period of intense hardship. Yet, it was here, amidst the smoke and struggle of the industrial age, that he would produce his most significant work. For years, you could find him tucked away in the British Museum, poring over stacks of trade reports, financial documents, and industrial surveys. He wasn't just reading, he was dissecting the very engine of modern life. From this exhaustive research, a powerful new framework emerged, one we now call historical materialism. What does that mean? Simply put, Marx proposed that the way a society produces and exchanges goods, its economic bases the foundation upon which everything else is built. Law, politics, culture, even our ideas and beliefs all sprout from this economic soil, and when that foundation shifts, so does the entire structure. Now, it's crucial to understand that Marx didn't see this as a rigid, mechanical process. He wasn't saying we're all just puppets of economic forces. Instead, he described an ongoing dance between human action and our material circumstances. We make our own history, he famously said, but not under conditions of our own choosing. We are constantly interacting with and reshaping the world we inherit. This idea sparked intense debate, which continues to this day. Some critics immediately labeled it as overly deterministic, arguing that it strips away human free will and reduces history to a predictable formula. Others, however, hailed it as a groundbreaking scientific approach to understanding the grand sweep of social change. For the first time, it seemed possible to analyze history not as a series of random events or great deeds, but as a process with its own internal logic. Within the progressive and revolutionary movements of his time, Marx was often a voice of caution. He argued against impulsive, poorly planned uprisings. True, lasting change, he believed, required organization, strategy, and, most importantly, the right economic conditions. A revolution couldn't just be willed into existence. Society had to be ready for it. Of course, not everyone was convinced. The rising school of economists, who were developing what we now call utility theory, completely rejected his analysis of value, which was based on labor. Yet, even his sharpest critics couldn't ignore the power of his project. They had to acknowledge the importance of his effort to connect the dots between production, technology, and social power, something few had attempted with such rigor. Marx's London years were a testament to his incredible intellectual stamina. Despite living in poverty, he managed to synthesize moral philosophy, deep data analysis, and sweeping historical study. This combination was incredibly rare in 19th century scholarship and created a comprehensive approach to understanding society that was unlike anything before it. As we move from his method to his core ideas, we see how this research shaped his view of the human experience under capitalism. In his early writings from 1844, often called the Economic and Philosophic Manuscripts, Marx introduced a concept that resonates deeply even today: alienation. He saw the modern worker as profoundly separated or alienated from the products of their labor. Think about a craftsman in the past who would design, create, and sell a chair. They had a deep connection to the entire process and the final product. Now, picture a factory worker who spends 12 hours a day attaching a single leg to thousands of chairs. They don't own the chair, they didn't design it, and they have no control over its fate. Their labor becomes just a task, a means to a wage, devoid of creativity and autonomy. Marx argued that this process of repetitive fragmented work robs us of a fundamental part of our humanity. He expanded on this with his collaborator Friedrich Engels in a work called The German Ideology. Here, they laid out a provocative claim: the ruling ideas of any age are the ideas of its ruling class. In other words, the beliefs, morals, and common sense that we often take for granted actually serve the interests of those who control the economy. The dominant ideology of a society, they argued, legitimizes the existing power structure and makes it seem natural and inevitable. These powerful ideas found their most famous expression in a short, explosive pamphlet published in 1848, the Communist Manifesto. Written for a broad political audience, it wasn't a dense academic text. It was a call to arms, summarizing his view of history as a story of class struggle. From masters and slaves to lords and serfs, and finally to the bourgeoisie and proletariat. Marx saw conflict between economic classes as the engine driving historical change. The manifesto remains a lasting, powerful statement on the dynamics of inequality. But Marx's ambition was much larger than writing a political pamphlet. He wanted to uncover the laws of motion of the capitalist economy itself. This monumental task took form in his magnum opus, Das Kapital, or Capital, with the first volume published in 1867. This wasn't just a critique. It was an exhaustive analysis of how production, profit, and the entire system worked. In Das Kapital, Marx portrays the modern economy as a system of incredible dynamism and progress, but one that is also fundamentally self-contradictory and prone to crisis. He argued that the relentless drive for profit creates internal tensions that the system cannot resolve. For instance, the constant push to increase efficiency by replacing workers with machines might boost profits in the short term. But it also undermines the very source of value. Labrum can lead to economic instability and unemployment. He believed that every economic system or mode of production contains the seeds of its own destruction. Just as feudalism gave way to capitalism, he predicted that the internal contradictions of capitalism would ultimately lead to a new form of social organization. This perspective transformed economics from a study of static, universal laws into a living, historical process. Through these incredible works, Karl Marx didn't just offer an opinion, he fundamentally changed how we study society. He challenged future economists, historians, and sociologists to see wealth, work, and power not as natural or fixed, but as the products of ever-evolving social structures. Whether you agree with his conclusions or not, the questions he asked over 150 years ago about inequality, power, and the nature of work continue to shape our conversations today. Thank you so much for joining me on this intellectual journey. If you found this exploration enlightening, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into the ideas that define our world. We'd love to have you as part of our community. See you in the next one.